Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of DABCC TV. We have David Karofsky from InstallFree with us today and to talk about the InstallFree solution. So I don't want to steal his thunder and tell you guys about what InstallFree is. I'll let David do that. So, David, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. And can you, let's just dive straight into it. So for my first question, can you just briefly tell us who you are, what do you do over at InstallFree, and, just a little bit about the InstallFree solution itself?
Yep. Well, absolutely. Well, first off, Doug, thank you very much for the opportunity to do a podcast with you today. Very excited about this. And a little bit about InstallFree. We are focused, we are a dynamic desktop computing company, and we are focused on application and desktop virtualization. We have a proprietary virtualization solution that we use, and we encapsulate and package up applications and then deploy them and manage them across an enterprise and beyond. And some of the special pieces of our technology is that we can create a single virtual application, and we can deploy that across a whole range of environments, for example, where that single application can work on an XP environment, on a Vista environment, as well as server-based computing like Citrix or XenApp, or even we can work on terminal servers as well, and we also work inside of VDIs and VMs. So a very flexible solution, really designed, we kind of drive the company in two directions. One is we really want to help improve the IT operational efficiency of companies. We want to make it easy for the IT managers to deliver and manage applications out to their users. But at the same time, we also want to ensure that the end user experience is never diminished. And we want to ensure that they continue to remain as productive as they are when they're working with traditional applications. And those are really the two areas that we drive our business by.
You had mentioned you work with Windows XP and terminals, all these different environments. Are there any environments you do not work with?
Well, right now we are very much focused on the Windows environment. So today we don't actively support Linux or Mac OS, for example. But within the Windows world, there really isn't anything or any area that we don't support. We work on 32-bit. We work on 64-bit as well. And so, within the Windows world, aren't too many limitations there.
Let's get into it. What are you going to show us?
So today I'm going to show you a couple of different things. The first thing I want to do is really show you and talk about the technology and have you, as well as your audience, really understand the concept of what we're doing from behind the scenes with the technology, and then I'll jump into the solution itself.
Sounds good.
All right, Doug. So the first thing I'm going to show is really kind of a background of our technology here. But before we do that, the first thing I want to show you is that we're actually working on a lockdown machine. So I can't even change the time on the clock, so I really don't have any administrative right privileges on this PC at all. You'll also see that there's really nothing installed. It's basically the core computer that, if it were to come out of the box. So there's really no programs or anything running on this PC at all. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a Firefox application. This is a virtual application that we've already created, and I'll show you how we do that later on in this demonstration. The first time I click on Firefox, you will see a user data file is created. This is a file that is directly associated with this Firefox application. I'll just go back to it here. Any and all changes that I make to this user data, or any and all changes that I make to the Firefox application, are kept inside this user data file. So one of the great things about that is it allows the Firefox application to remain stateless. And so you can send this Firefox application out to any user in any environment, and any changes they make are always kept inside that user data file. So for example, right now you see it as about a meg in size. Well, my home page requires a Flash plugin. And so I can do this, by the way, on the fly. Even though I'm working on a lockdown machine, I still have administrative right privileges within the application itself. And so I can dynamically expand an application on the fly. And you'll see here in the Firefox folder that the user data grew to about a little over 13 meg. That's because it's holding all the information of that flash file that are now inside of it.
Well, now you had shown us that this is a lockdown sort of virgin workstation.
That's right.
Is there an InstallFree client installed, or how does that work?
No, it's a very good question. I'll show that a little bit later on, but the answer is no. The client that we require is actually a virtual client. There's a little icon here in the lower right-hand corner that says InstallFree Shell Bridge. It is a virtual client that runs on the local PC. It really is a script, and it becomes part of a user's Active Directory, or any LDAP for that matter, becomes part of that login script. And so when a user logs in the morning, that script automatically gets run in the background as part of their login credentials.
I can literally have a non-persistent, let's say, VDI workstation that is just a gold build, has absolutely nothing installed, and your client is a virtual application launching virtual applications.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. That's exactly right.
Very cool. Very cool.
One of the nice things about that is we have no dependencies. And so we can run on any machine, so you're not just limited to the machines that maybe have that client installed. You can run on any machine and log in, and based on those credentials, the bridge will run because it's part of your, in this case, AD, it's part of your Active Directory credentials that get launched.
Yeah, cool. Nobody can blame you guys for breaking something also.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Nobody can blame us for breaking anything. A couple of other things that we can really show here. If I were to close Firefox, for example, and I were to remove that user data file, I've essentially reset the Firefox application, where now the Firefox will have to create a new user data file to dynamically bind with. And as you can see, I've basically reset the application back to 0.
Wow.
If I close that and I put in the original user data file that we had, Firefox will dynamically bind with that original user data file to give me the application I've already customized a bit with the Flash file.
Oh, very cool.
So from a backup perspective, all the user or all the data center or the IT guy really has to do is back up this user data file. And so what we recommend is we have a product called dynamic syncing and bidirectional streaming, where we can dynamically sync this user data file up with the data center, make it part of the regular data center backup processes, and you always have that image and that backup copy of the user's user data, which can then get associated with an application. So it makes it very easy now to revert back to an older version of an application. If there were a virus or a bug or to affect this Firefox, delete this user data file, go back to yesterday's user data file, and reset the application before the virus hit.
Oh, very cool. Well, one of the areas that we see that's really growing in the desktop virtualization world is personalization, right? Because it's needed as we start abstracting the layers of computing apart. We need to tie the personalization, user credential or user data back to our applications. But you guys have this just built into your solution, so there's no need for roaming profiles or some sort of third-party profile solution with InstallFree. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's actually no third party. We actually give you that roaming profile because now this user data, when it attaches to this application, can go wherever you go. So, if you got an online mode and you're working via the web or you're going to VPN into your network from home, you VPN in, and again, you're going to get authenticated against Active Directory. Your applications will actually get streamed down to your local PC with the appropriate user data file, and your customization is always there. So it goes wherever you go.
Well, very cool. Well, that's I definitely, and I know you'll probably show this off in a little bit, so I'll let you show it off when you're ready. But I'm excited to see how that streams down, and I imagine it has complete shell integration, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. I will. I'll show that in a little bit. A couple of more things to understand about the technology. One of the things we can do with InstallFree is we can patch applications on the fly. So, for example, you'll see here that I'm running version 2.0011 of Firefox. Well, I can easily, as a user, go and patch that application on the fly. I could certainly go to updates and do it that way, or I've actually created a patch file. You see here that I dropped the patch from 11 to 14 into the same folder, and the next time I double-click on Firefox, it will dynamically bind with the user data file and the Firefox patch to give me my updated version of Firefox.
Wow.
So we really look at this as kind of element-based computing, where we're taking an application down to its core elements, which include the application itself, an update, an expansion, a toolbar, all these different components of an application. We break them down and we decouple them, which allows us to now, if you decouple, then we can be flexible. And so we can give a user their unique experience based on the different elements of an application that they may want. And here's an update as an example.
You bet. They're just all building blocks, and you had mentioned toolbars. So, for example, if you have people in your organization that might want to use a certain type of toolbar, for me, I like the Google toolbar, and I could just have that assigned just to me and me only.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I'll show you how we do that. We do it with a Yahoo toolbar, but I'll show you exactly how we do that for an individual user. One of the other nice things we can do is we can extend an application. So, for example, I have some PDFs here on my website that I can't read right now because I don't have any file association because I don't have an Adobe or a PDF reader on my computer. So let me cancel out of here. So what I can do here is I can drop an Adobe reader into the same folder, and now Firefox will dynamically bind with all three of these elements to allow me to be able to open up a PDF on the InstallFree site.
Wow.
So here, and I'll just launch PDF for Adobe right inside.
Well, that is very cool, David. That's
That's
very cool. But as you're showing this, you're the one dropping these files over to this folder. I can't imagine wanting to say to my end user, hey, drop this, you need this, move this. How does that work, to be seamless to the end user? No, absolutely. That's a great lead-in into the next section of what I'm going to show you, where we're really going to talk about the solution itself. Today, the first part was really more about the technology and the concept of dynamic binding and that piece. The next section that I really want to talk about is actually how we use the product itself. Well, perfect. Well, let's do it. Sound good? Sounds good. So in this section, just as a reminder, again, I'm working on a lockdown PC here, so I can't even change the time on the clock. And also, if you'll see in my documents, you'll see that I have some files here, but I don't have any file association, so I can't really open these up. So let's start to go out and distribute some applications out to our users. Again, the InstallFree bridge itself is a virtual client. It never has to be installed on the PC. It's basically a 5 or 6 line script that becomes part of your AD or any LDAP script. So I'm going to remote into my server here. And essentially what I have running is I'm running on a Windows Server 2003. And there's a couple of things that we have going on. This is the InstallFree Management Console. And there's really two components of the console. And by the way, this too is a virtual application. It's simply an executable that runs in its own environment on top of any Windows-based machine. So we also don't need a dedicated management server to be able to manage and deploy applications or deliver applications out to users. It too is virtual. When we launch the Management Console, it really does two things. The first thing it does is it reads from Active Directory. And so if you're familiar with the AD look and feel right here, that's exactly what we do, is we mimic the Active Directory layout in terms of company, organizational units, groups, down to individual users. And I can sit here and deploy applications at any level of the organization. The second thing it does is the Management Console will read from a existing file share that's in the customer's environment. And this is where our virtual applications, and we call them AODs, applications on demand. Our virtual applications are simply stored in an existing file share in the customer's environment. We do not need any kind of a special hardware. We don't need a special dedicated server to serve up our applications. And so from a investment standpoint or an infrastructure standpoint, we require no changes whatsoever, and we can leverage the customer's existing environment, which is a big value add because it really just makes it very easy to get InstallFree up and running and start to manage and deploy applications out there. Oh, absolutely.
All right, so let's start to go and do that. I'm going to right-click, for example, on my entire company, and let's give them some applications. I'm going to give them Office 2003, no expansions yet, and let's give them WinRAR, which is a file compression like a WinZip. And I'm going to minimize out of here and go back to my workstation. And you'll see here in the bottom right-hand corner, the InstallFree bridge is spinning. Basically, it's polling for changes in the management console. And you can see here that I've added WinRAR and Office 2003 to the environment. Now, what's particularly important to understand is we have added these applications to the environment. We have not installed them. InstallFree never installs anything, hence the name of the company. Each of the applications, when we package them up, are packaged up with their complete set of resources that they need to function completely independent of the host operating system. So think of them in their own little virtual bubble with their own engine or little operating system that allows them to run completely independent.
Now, when you say it that way, David, it makes me think of one of the problems or one of the issues that we had with Softricity, where, or Microsoft SoftGrid, or I guess AppV now,
yep.
Where if you had a application like JD Edwards or SAP that required Office to, or integrated and worked with Office, then you were required to sequence, to package both applications together.
Right.
Is that do you have this issue with InstallFree?
No, we actually don't. What's really nice about InstallFree is we can package applications completely separate or independent of each other, yet allow them to communicate with each other. And what really does that is the InstallFree bridge. This application itself that we're running here allows and provides that layer of connectivity between virtual applications as well as virtual and non-virtual applications, and I can show you that as well.
Cool.
And so let me show you a couple of examples here. If we go back to my documents, and by the way, again, going back to the premise that we want to ensure the end-user experience is never diminished, our applications show up here in the Start menu. They'll show up here in the Programs menu. So here's WinRAR, and here's Microsoft Office, and I could right-click and put a shortcut on the desktop if I wanted to, whatever I wanted to do. Our applications also show up in the Add Remove Programs.
Oh, neat.
And so, which is really good from a auditing standpoint. So our integration into the shell of the operating system is so tight here that here's our Office application and here's our WinRAR. And there's really, as you can see, nothing else installed. It's simply device drivers or whatever it may be. So from an auditing perspective, you could take an SMS or a third-party software, do an audit of the environment, and see what applications are running on this PC, and our virtual apps will show up.
Now, what would happen if within Add Remove Programs you clicked Remove?
If you clicked Remove here, actually nothing. You will get a notice here that says Office can't be removed. It's a virtual application, and you can't uninstall it. It's because it's not installed, and so you can't actually remove it. So let me go back in here, and let's go back to My Documents. And so now you'll see here that we have file association. So here's an Excel spreadsheet, a Microsoft Word doc, a couple of PowerPoints, and so you can see here that we now have file association. Also, we have shell extension. So to your point earlier, Doug, if I were to right-click on a PowerPoint, you can see here that I can now archive that with WinRAR, which, again, to your other point, are two separately virtualized packages of applications. They don't communicate with each other. They're separately packaged, but here they can communicate with each other by simply right-clicking on a PowerPoint and allowing myself to create an archive.
That's very cool. This is 100% on a lockdown machine.
100% on a lockdown PC, exactly. If I go here, let's launch Excel. You'll see that there's a slight delay here. That is because the very first time I'm launching Excel, the rest of the application is being streamed down and being processed locally and cached locally. So that slight delay is just that I'm streaming down the rest of the bits of the Excel application here.
Now, that makes me ask the question. Let's say, I set up, I have a laptop. I set up, log in, I get my applications through the InstallFree bridge, and then I immediately slam my lid shut, run out the door, go home, and go to launch Excel. What happens if it's not all there?
Well, it's a good question. So a couple of things can happen. We can set the management console, and I can go back here and I can just show this. I can set a user here based on their properties, I can have 3 different settings for the application availability, where it can be online, offline, or streaming. If it's online, the applications are only available when that user is connected to the network. So the applications are streamed down, they're processed and run locally, but as soon as they disconnect from the network, the applications are released back into the data center. If they work offline, the entire weight of the application is streamed down to the user, processed locally. They could disconnect from the network, and the applications are still available for them. And all functions of the application are available offline. So you can take a laptop, go on an airplane, continue to work. Any changes that you make get synced up. The next time you log back in, that user data then dynamically gets synced back up into the network.
Very cool.
And then a streaming mode, which is the last mode, is kind of a combination of the two, where essentially we will stream down the bits that are needed, and you work with those bits. If you can disconnect from the network, the bits that you stream down are available. So if you use PowerPoint, the PowerPoint would be available. But say you didn't stream down the clip art functionality, that wouldn't be available to you if you're in this streaming mode.
Very cool.
So let me go back here. So I gave the entire company, as you remember, Office 2003, which includes the generic Excel. No special toolbars or anything like that. Now, if this particular user was, for example, in the finance department, and maybe they need a special toolbar, we can dynamically send that to them on the fly. So I'll close out of Excel.
So the user calls up the help desk and says, "Hey, where's my toolbar?"
Exactly. Calls up the IT guy and says, "Hey, Joe, I need MS